Hey, I'm John Gibbons. Welcome to my studio. This is where I've worked from in Carlow in Ireland for the last number of years. It's my favourite place to go. Even if I'm not making music, I just like to sometimes sit here and drink in the atmosphere. It's nice and quiet, tucked away from the world, and it's the polar opposite of when I'm live at a gig. And I'm going to talk to you today a little bit about the process that I use when I'm making music, what inspires me to make music, and we'll use as a focal point for that my track Let Me Love You, which came out a few years ago and was a big hit for me. It's one of my favourite tracks, and in terms of production, at the time it was certainly the best thing I had done at that point. So I think it's a really good one to chat about. If you're unfamiliar with it, here's a quick listen. Know my version, you'll certainly know the original by Mario, and the reason that I picked that track to cover wasn't a calculated one. As with many of the tracks that I make, particularly when they're cover versions, tends to stem from me just messing around in the studio, just playing around with different ideas, and quite often it's an instrumental that I'm working on, and suddenly I might think, okay, this vocal might work over it, that vocal might work over it, and I just play around with different vocals. That's what happened in this case. There was an instrumental that I thought, okay, that might work with Mario. And a good friend of mine in London, who I've worked with a lot over there, Franklin, we were formerly on the same record label. I knew that he had done a version of it as well, or had been playing around with an idea about that. So I got on the phone and said, hey man, have a listen to this, see if we can come together on it and use the best of both of our ideas to come up with what eventually was the finished product, which is a full-on collab between myself and him. And again, growing up, one of my favourite songs. Like, I wasn't the most romantic guy when it came to musical taste growing up, but there were certain songs, and particularly certain vocals, that always kind of caught me here, and that was one of them. I mean, the original vocal, and that isn't the original vocal, believe it or not, it's not Mario on that track, but the original vocal, just, there was something about his voice that just caught me every time it came on the radio, and I thought, if I love the original, if I can do justice to it, surely that's going to be something that will work well and resonate with people. So you're probably wondering why or how is it not him on the vocals. So let's just isolate the vocal for a second. So for those familiar with the original vocal, that is really, really close. I mean, that would fool me if I didn't know that it's not Mario. And again, for most cover versions, particularly in the world of dance music that you hear nowadays, if it's really close to the original, it's almost never the original. There are some absolute sorcerers out there who run companies who are able to replay vocals and redo vocals so close to the original that you just couldn't tell. To give you another example, the track that I did, Michael Jackson's PYT, a number of years back, most people assumed it was Michael Jackson on the vocal, to the point where I got so much online abuse from people saying, well, you never credited Michael. It wasn't him on it. It was one of the companies that we use who are able to source vocalists, and they can pretty much recreate not just the vocal but any sound that you're looking to recreate. Now, why would we do that rather than use the original vocal? It's because it's so much easier to get clearance for a replayed vocal than it would be to sample the original. There are different types of copyright in the music world. There's intellectual copyright, which would handle the writing of the track, and there's the physical or mechanical copyright, which is the actual recording itself. So if you have the original vocal and you sample it, you have to get clearance for both. If it's a replay, you only have to get clearance for the intellectual side of it because you're not using the original master recording. So it just makes the whole process for a record label, who invariably are the ones who will clear a sample for an artist, to get that clearance that's required. Because if you don't get it, you're going to, I mean, if the track's a big hit, you're going to get in trouble. If it's not a big hit, well, what's the point anyway? So it's just well worth doing for anybody out there who's looking to sample and to kind of use vocals or other sounds. They don't have to be vocals in their productions. It's well worth checking out how you can get clearances and learning a little bit about that, because it'll stand to you. Even if you're not with a record label, I would certainly recommend at least making the initial attempt. Otherwise, it's very unlikely that your track can actually go anywhere. And even now with AI and algorithmic based music kind of programs, any of the sites that you're hosting music on can identify really, really quickly if you're using a sample and just have it taken down anyway. So, you know, it's a minefield in terms of clearances, but that is something that people would ask me a lot. Oh, how did you get Mario on a track? How did you get Michael Jackson or permission to use Michael Jackson's vocal on a track? Simple answer is I didn't. We got permission to use a replay of those vocals, which is much, much easier to do. Hot Stepper is another good example of that. And then occasionally you can be very lucky and get another top class named singer to do it for you, such as was the case with my Christmas song, Spaceman Came Travelling. Krista Berg did the original, but my version has Nina Nesbitt on vocals there, which she just brought a whole different kind of a feel to the track, and it worked really, really well. So that's a little bit about why I picked this song, how we got the vocal over the line so that I could actually do this song, and I suppose the fact that it was a hit was great for me. And if you like, I'll show you a little bit about the process and what different sounds went into it and how I went about that.